Good afternoon and welcome to the ONCIMMUNE Holdings PLC Interim Results Investor Presentation. Throughout this recorded presentation, investors will be in listen-only mode. Questions are encouraged, can be submitted at any time via the Q&A tab situated in the right-hand corner of your screen. Just click Q&A, scroll to the bottom, type your question and press send. The company may not be in a position to answer every question received during the meeting itself. However, the company review all questions submitted today and publish responses where it's appropriate to do so. Before we begin, we'd like to submit the following poll. I'd now like to hand you over to Dr. Adam Hill, CEO, and Matthew Hall, CFO. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much, Paul, for the introduction. Welcome all to ONCIMMUNE's interim results and progress update today. Apologies for my croaky voice. Myself and Matthew, CEO and CFO, respectively, of course, who you've met before, many of you will be presenting today. In the first instance, I'll walk through commercial updates on both our service business and our product business before handing over to Matthew to walk through the finances from our announcement this morning, and then we'll end with the outlook. Just to remind you all, ONCIMMUNE is a business that is specialist in the use of autoantibodies for the detection of binding events between antigen or proteins that cause an immune response and their antibodies. We have three sets of tools that we use in order to deliver both our service and develop our products. The first is SIRATAG, which is a proprietary tool developed in-house that uses the Luminex technology through our partner to explore the proprietary immunogenic protein or antigen library that we have developed over a 20-year period. That is a tool that allows you to identify binding events in a vast number of native proteins. The second set of tools are our Navigate panels. These are tailorable panels, disease-focused or therapeutic area-focused panels that allow us to improve the power of the statistics that we use over and above that in the SIRATAG tool set. And then finally, we have a series of tools, bioinformatics tools, that are used, that have been handcrafted, curated internally, that are used to derive insight from the analysis. That is, come up with a plausible biological rationale as to why we see the binding events that we see in certain blood samples. And it is very much the combination of those three that our customers see as being value adding and differentiated within the marketplace. So we have two sides to our business, as you are all aware. The ImmunoInsights business, really only 2.5 years old at the moment, is our pharma service business based off of that common platform I've just described. Having launched in 2020, we have secured contracts with 5 of the top 10 pharmaceutical companies, which are expected to constitute about 70% of revenue for the period ending 31 May 22. Most of the clients have multiple studies ongoing, with 5 separate programs underway with the world's leading oncology program. Indeed, we've doubled the number of contracted clients year upon year to 13, of which 3 have multiple contracts in flight at this point in time. During Q2 and Q3 of this financial year, the company has substantially expanded its commercial team with 2 additional hires in the US, bringing our BD team now to 7 individuals. The expansion in our BD team, as well as the expansion in our capability and competence in our Dortmund facility, was funded by the oversubscribed and very successful fundraise that we brought to the market in March last year. And to top off the establishment of our infrastructure in the US to date, we have now established an office in the Cambridge Innovation Centre in Kendall Square in Boston, which, for those that aren't aware, is very much right in the centre right at the heart of the global life science industry. Literally to the left of us is Sanofi, to the right of us is Takeda, downstairs is AstraZeneca. On the product side of our business, we continue to support the IDX lung program we announced last year in combination with or collaboration with Southampton and Leeds. We've now recruited 815 patients into that program, which is evaluating us and a number of other approaches to the early detection of lung cancer. It's likely a third site will be brought on board in the north of England, but that is yet to be announced. In addition, there are two other evaluation programs that we are participating in, selling product from the bottom up into the NHS, which is absolutely the most successful way of getting product adopted by the healthcare system at home. And the first is in Norfolk and Waveney, which we've now largely completed and just waiting the final evaluation report to be released in Q4, which we step into tomorrow, 1st of March being the first day of that final quarter of FY22, and hopefully that report will support the commissioning of early CDT lung into that CCG later on in this calendar year. In addition, that second evaluation program is due to commence at a nearby CCG in the coming weeks. That program is already contracted, and we are just preparing to ship product. And finally, further afield, we continue to build a very strong relationship with our colleagues in the US at Biodesix, who, whilst suffering a little from the impact of COVID in the US, absolutely are continuing to stick to their commitment to increase the number of sales folk that they have on the ground selling our product into their partners, and have also very recently reminded us of the critical importance of our product to their product portfolio. It is the foundation stone from which their product portfolio is built. Matthew, over to you.
Thanks very much, Adam, and good afternoon, everyone. The interim financial highlights for the period to the 30th of November of 2021 had revenue of 1.43 million against same period of 2020, 1.83 million. It was very, very much and unusually affected by the first 3 months of the financial year, the June, July, August, and to an extent September period, where if people cast their mind back, the easing of the COVID restrictions really did mean for the first time people could go on holidays, unlike the same period in 2020. What that meant for us in practical terms was contracts which we had progressed to certain points, even some contracts which we had within procurement and in the legal process, really ground to a halt for that period until people came back to work. But it is certainly the case that from the moment that people came back to work, so the beginning of Q2, the level of activity, including contract signing and the build-up of the pipeline and the rate at which opportunities move through the pipeline, picked up noticeably. And so you will have read in the interims, and you will hear in this presentation today, a real sense that Q2, Q3, and then moving into Q4, there has been a marked increase in the pickup of that business, and we put that down to the COVID effect in the first part of it. Gross profit correspondingly, therefore, was lower at just shy of £1 million. Administrative expenses were higher. They were expected to be higher because, as Adam said, in March of last year, we did an equity fundraise for the sole purpose of expanding our Dortmund facility, increasing the headcount of scientists, bioinformaticians, and laboratory staff in that facility, and that program of expanding operating capacity in that facility has gone according to plan. In fact, we have completed that expansion ahead of schedule. And so the increase in administrative expenses does in part reflect that increase in that operating capacity. And it was also, as Adam has said, During the period, we also started to increase, as we said we would in the equity fundraise, increase our BD team, and we did that with great speed. And so, as we sit here at the moment, our BD team, 5 of whom sit in the US, now total 7. And we are really seeing the benefits of that within the pipeline, and a number of opportunities that are coming through. So that accounts for the administrative costs. Research and development across the group really spread between Nottingham and Dortmund. Dortmund, very little R&D. They were very, very busy progressing studies. Nottingham was really the nub of that R&D development, not expected to increase very much at all from here on through, very stable from the previous year. In fact, probably as time marches forward, we would look to climb that expenditure line. Loss simply reflects all of the above points. Cash, gross cash at bank, the end of the period, just shy of 3 million, 3.28 for the same period in the prior period. Net debt, that is cash minus borrowings and minus lease liabilities, that is the lease relating to the fit out of the Nottingham facility, was 5.39 million, down from 7.22 same period last year. And the board took the opportunity to draw down an additional 3 million of debt right at almost at the end of the calendar year, in order to be able to increase the rate of the expansion of the US BD team faster than was originally envisaged. And so in order to do that, an additional amounts of money were drawn down at the end of the year. So they are the interim highlights. So at that point, I'll hand back to Adam.
Thank you very much, Matthew. So on to outlook, and there's really 3 key points that I want to try and make here. The first is that we've absolutely been increasing the ImmunoInsights pipeline, and there's already questions for us on that, which we can maybe go on into in a bit more detail. With penetration of the top 10 global pharmaceutical companies, this is in no small part as a result of the traction that we've been generating over the last 2 quarters, Q2 and Q3, so much so that management now are in a position to guide full-year ImmunoInsights revenues to be not less than £6 million. That's ImmunoInsights revenues to not less than £6 million. And indeed, contracts signed to date this year, along with those that we've got near-term visibility of, give the board confidence in the prospects of the business, both to the end of this year and beyond. On entering the next financial year, indeed, the company expects to have materially improved revenue visibility arising from contracts already signed and those that we intend to sign in a matter of weeks. So that's the first point. I think the second point I would like to make to you is that we are going to change the accounting reference period. And the reason for this is we sit in a relatively uncomfortable position year to year, engaging with our major customers, pharmaceutical companies, who typically buy services January to March, April time, and then November and December, as they are a calendar year financial year. And of course, it can take anywhere between 4 weeks to 8 months for us to completely recognize revenue from any one of those contracts. And so in order to allow us to both book revenue, but also recognize that revenue in the same financial year, the board has taken the decision to move our accounting reference period until the 31st of August, in essence giving us a 5th quarter to this financial year, or a stub period between the 1st of June and the 31st of August. And then the final point that I would like to to make is that we have been delighted to engage in a recent market analysis commissioned from an independent, very well-known independent strategy consultancy very recently that has sized the market and given us a sense of competition. And I'm delighted to share with you that their view of the market is that outhouse pharma services, or bioanalytical pharma services, is worth about $2.3 billion and growing at 10% per annum. However, the segment in which we sit in that, smaller nonetheless, but growing far faster at about 27% per annum. And we believe as a result of this analysis that as a pure play service provider, ImmunoInsights will become a market leader in this segment by the end of 2023, with visibility to apologies for moving that on one slide, with visibility to a market share of about 12%. Opportunities exist in segments also adjacent to the current autoantibody profiling segment, which are accessible both through organic programs that we're currently pursuing ourselves, our own internal development, but also inorganic development. We now have amassed a world-class business development team that have very strong relationships with our pharmaceutical customers, in particular those that we have multiple contracts with, and there is a fantastic opportunity sat in front of us to also sell into those customers, value-adding, differentiated, and proprietary technologies that are synergistic to our own. So with that, I'm going to pause, maybe hand back to Paul, and then we'll take your Q&A.
Fantastic. Adam, Matthew, thank you very much indeed for the presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, do please continue to submit your questions using the Q&A tab situated in the right-hand corner of your screen. Just while the company take a few moments to review those questions submitted already, I'd like to remind you the recording of the presentation, along with a copy of the slides and the published Q&A, can be accessed via your investor dashboard. Adam, we did receive a pre-submitted question. Perhaps I can start off the Q&A session with that. What impact will the recent NICE report on early CDT lung have on your plans for it to become an integral component for future lung cancer detection programs globally?
Yeah, thank you very much, Paul. And the NICE report, for those that haven't seen it, suggested there were opportunities to further develop the research base underpinning early CDT lung. That is not going to have a near-term impact upon the grassroots or bottom-up sales that we are pursuing through our partners, both at the IDX Lung Program, Southampton, Leeds, Norfolk and Waveney. And of course, we will be reviewing, digesting that guidance, identifying and working with NICE on identifying gaps in the evidence base and looking to plug that as we move forward. But certainly no near-term impact. There's a question here on what has been the driving force in the increase of contract signings in ImmunoInsights, and do you see this trend continuing? The driving force, I think, probably is the high quality of output that we deliver from our Dortmund facility. The team there have never lost a piece of work, number one, and number two, they've always re-upped the work, and that is demonstrated by the multiple contracts we now are signing with individual customers. So it's absolutely the quality of the output that we deliver that I think is driving the growth, but it's certainly supported very substantially by the increase in BD team and the location of that BD team, the relationships that those BD folk are able to build. I need to remind everyone that, of course, we've built this business through a pandemic where we have not just originated, but also sold and delivered work via Zoom. And now we have only very recently had the opportunity to go and sit with those customers that we have delivered quality output for, and we are finding that they have a lot more work for us than maybe they were able to share virtually. So the face-to-face engagement is absolutely helping. Matthew, maybe a question for you. Q4 run rate, cash flow, and the forecast. Is there a near-term debt or equity raise?
Yeah, thanks, Adam. And the answer to that is not. No envisaged further debt raising or equity raising for the current business. So that's pretty straight answer, really.
Thank you. Another one for you, 4 million of admin expenses. Will that be an ongoing expense in future years, or was it all a one-off?
I think there's one can see a decline, a gradual decline in the overall administrative expenses relating to the Nottingham facility, i.e. the product business. But as we increase the amount of business that's coming out of Dortmund, there may be some slight step change. Just to remind everyone, the majority of the cost that gets captured in the Dortmund facility is a cost of goods. So everyone except the sales team, that cost all goes through the cost of goods, because all but 2 people sitting in Dortmund are all involved in studies, and so that their costs, their salary costs on costs, all get trapped in the cost of goods. And there are 2 other heads, an accountant and a sort of general administrative person sits in there, but their costs aren't particularly significant. And I'm not envisaging any particular step up. But on the BD side, those BD costs are going through the administrative side. We've paused for a moment on the size of the BD team in the US. But again, I should think that once we've had perhaps 6 months worth of activity from the current team members, we'll need to look again at what resources they need, including should we be justifying an increase in the headcount on that BD. But that would only ever be based on increased demand for BD activities. So I think that's how I see the course of the next 12 months across the business.
Thank you, Matthew. Maybe one more for you. Have the debtors referred to at the last investor presentation been recovered, or are they being recovered?
So there was a number of debtors. Just to remind everyone, those debtors related entirely to the product side of the business. And there were a number of debtors that sat in there. Some of those indeed have been collected on an orderly basis, as I think I said at the last time we had this gathering. There is still one reasonably large debtor, which I referred to, that has not been collected, but there is active dialogue going on with that party. And indeed, there is commercial activity going on with that party in their particular region. They're undertaking a study as we speak to help them get to a position where the product is more commercially acceptable in their market. And so I would expect, as I said last time, that over time we will come to a resolution over that. But we're not pressing that particularly hard for the moment.
Thank you, Matthew. And maybe one that I will pick up. You mentioned R&D expenses would be steady moving forward, but of course I've spoken about in-house R&D. How do we reconcile both of those comments? Well, look, our Dortmund facility is flat chat delivering commercial contracts. We have of course invested in the expansion of our capability there, and so they are starting to do more organic development, and we do anticipate that they will continue to increase the R&D effort into 2023 and beyond.
Adam, if I just might add also, just on that particular point, one of the luxuries we have within the Immuno Insights business is that very often the organic development which we want to do is also being done at the customer's expense, because often we are pushing forward frontiers of science in particular areas in an area which we want to go, and so very often that R&D expenditure is covered for by the client, which is really quite handy actually.
Thank you, Matthew. Early CDT in Spain, a question being asked, and yes, there is further progress in our distributor or through our distributor in Spain. They having been very successful at signing up agreements with the two largest private providers of care in Spain. They now have signed up one of the largest public providers of care in the region. Also, of course, Spain, like most European countries, has been hampered by the COVID response. There is a substantial backlog of cancers or potential cancers that those systems need to move through, and we anticipate that our distributors will be successful in supporting that work, both in Spain and further abroad. Another question, a little bit more strategic or high level here. Could a global pharma company make a sole or majority use of the ImmunoInsights business, bearing in mind what we know of their workflow? And I think the answer is probably. Certainly those that we have deep relationships with, I am very sure could utilize our capability internally. Of course, that isn't a focus for the business today. We are delighted to be able to help them with their most pressing and challenging questions, and long may that continue. Another interesting regulatory question maybe, could ImmunoInsights become a must-use business, perhaps via FDA request? And that's a really excellent question that I don't have a short and simple answer to. At one end of the spectrum, not today. At the other end of the spectrum, yes, absolutely, in the near term. We do engage the FDA. We've had a number of conversations with them. They, as you might appreciate, have a menu of biomarker assays that they like to see in certain therapeutic areas. But that is a list that continues to evolve, and I think the more that we continue to demonstrate value and publish the demonstration of that value in peer-reviewed literature, the more likely organizations such as the FDA are going to look at this biomarker class, this particular niche biomarker class, as value adding and something that they would want to mandate as part of a regulatory process. Not today, but certainly we do have conversations with the FDA and others. And then maybe finally, when you talk about contracted clients, what visibility do you have over your pipeline of opportunities? Well, we have substantial visibility. Our sales cycle is somewhere between 12 and 15 months for an initial engagement, maybe 6 to 9 months to re-up the relationship on the back of a positive and high quality deliverable, which gives us visibility. Of course, pharma companies have multiple conflicting priorities. Of course, as earlier discussed, they tend to buy in certain months and are less predisposed to buying in other months. And of course, what we sell is not a simple offering. It is complex, highly value adding, often requires multiple stakeholders, and so the progress of opportunities throughout the pipeline can be difficult to model. Nonetheless, the way in which you counter that is by building a healthy pipeline, and certainly that pipeline's health continues to grow day by day, and we believe that we will be in an incredibly strong position at the beginning of the next financial year, much more so than maybe we were at the beginning of this financial year. So with that, I think we will Paul, hand back to you.
That's fantastic. Thank you indeed for covering those questions from investors. And of course, any further questions that do come through, the company will be able to review those questions and will publish responses where appropriate to do so. Before redirecting investors to provide you with their feedback, I know that's particularly important to you. Adam, perhaps I could just ask you just for a final few closing comments, please.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Please remember, Immune Insights pipeline continues to increase. We're penetrating top 10 global pharma companies. That growth is largely being accelerated out of our US BD effort. And today, we have at least more than double the number of clients that we had last year, with line of sight to being a leader in this market segment in the not too distant future. Thank you very much for being so supportive of us and for joining us this afternoon.
That's fantastic. Adam, Matthew, thank you again for updating investors today. Could I please ask investors not to close the session, as you'll be automatically redirected to provide your feedback in order that the management team can better understand your views and expectations. This will only take a few moments to complete. I'm sure it's greatly valued by the company. On behalf of the management team of ONCIMMUNE Holdings PLC, we'd like to thank you for attending today's presentation. That concludes today's session. Thank you and good afternoon to you all.